Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Breakfast Analysis. It's been a minute, and I do apologize for that. As you can tell, the background is different. Everything is different. And that's because I'm in Montreal right now doing the Canada Nationals, and that's why there's been such a long delay. I've been in Montreal the whole month, and so it's been hard to find times to record videos. I've also been doing all sorts of casting and stuff, so there hasn't been a lot of time. Next month, I should mostly stay in Edmonton. I guess there's still like Raleigh and some other stuff that might be coming up. So I can't promise I'll be in Edmonton for the whole thing, but hopefully we will record a little bit more next month as well. And then the months after that, hopefully we should get back to a bit of a normal schedule. But I wanted to get this video out today because it's a video about Challenger League teams, or the upcoming Challenger League teams for North American Season 10. And I want to make this just to sort of go over the teams that I think have a good chance to qualify. Of course, Open Qualifiers start tomorrow. Assuming I get this out in a timely manner, which means that a lot of people aren't going to necessarily know who they want to follow. They're going to know what teams they should expect to do well. And so this is going to be a brief introductory video to the teams that I think are worth following or have a good chance at shooting their shot. I said like a couple of days ago on Twitter that I've got a list of 21 teams. Those were supposed to be the teams that have gone in the video. A couple of them have died. A couple of them made some roster moves. So I think this video will contain 20 teams, all things considered. And if I miss anybody, then I do apologize. Either I didn't know you existed or I just think you're bad. Feel free to assume one way or another. But with all that said, let's just jump right into things. The first 12/11, because one of them is dead, are randomized. Don't put any effort into the order. And then the next, 6, 7, or 8? Next 8 are also randomized, but they are separated into two sort of chunks. One chunk that I think have a really decent chance, pretty well known, and the other chunk I just think maybe they'll go on a run and go through the new quals. Our first team on my list, though, is called Interro's Disciples. This roster consisting of Delta Force, Bonilla X, Swoof, Strato, and Cool Hand Luke are an interesting team. They're probably near the bottom of the end of my list of teams that I think can qualify, but I do think they deserve to be on this list. The core of this squad was known as Digital Dynasty a little while ago, who competed in U.S. Nationals and Las Vegas Qualifiers. They did fine there, but not fantastic. They recently had Xeno and BP playing on their roster. They were replaced by Strato and Cool Hand Luke sometime in the past, I think, week or so, because at least officially they weren't on the roster back when I first made this list. So they've been having some roster issues there. They made it to top 16 in the Raleigh qualifiers as well, but they ended up making too many roster moves, and so they had to have a forfeit loss in the very first round. I think they just snuck in there too. I think they were the 16th seed, and then forfeit loss to like SSG or somebody good. I don't remember who. Maybe it was Rec. Either way, they are going to be one of my first teams that I think are looking pretty good. My second team, Stranger Team. This one I just want to mention because I think people might bring it up if I don't. This roster was announced as Albanai, Cookies, Prophet, Wrath, and Mex. These guys are dead, 100% confirmed. They are not going to be playing together as a 5. Maybe some of their players, I know they are not all on teams, so they'll play together or join teams together. A couple of them already have joined a team together, which we'll talk about soon. But this core is dead, and so just want to touch on that. Don't worry about them. Power Rangers are another squad that I think a lot of people are going to have heard of before. Drip announced this team, his roster he was building to get him back into PL after he qualified once. He can do it again. And then immediately he left for Disrupt Gaming. So he abandoned this roster, but they are still together. The other 4 players that he announced with him are still competing. Those 4 being Dot Dash, who now is the captain of that team, Prophecy, Art, and X-Prod, as well as their new member, Carlito. I think this is actually a pretty good-looking roster. Less so without Drip. Obviously, he was a big factor in 92 Dream Team's success in the last season of Challenger League. Of course, qualified to be a Pro League player. Didn't play any games. Did play for 92 in Vegas. Not on the squad anymore. Dot Dash was also in Vegas. You might remember him playing on Rise Nation. Pretty bad performance there. Not going to lie. He struggled at that LAN. But he's been well in the past. Art was on Organized Chaos last season. Definitely one of their lesser known players, one of their least flashy players. But that team did very well, and their best players went on to do great things, right? Playing for Space Station, playing for TSM. There's a lot of talent that was in that roster, and maybe Art has developed as well with his fellow former teammates. X-Prod was in OC for qualifiers, and then he played for Leftovers a little bit. He's sort of been all over the place, hasn't been on a real consistent team for a long time, so hopefully if this squad makes CL, he can stick together for these guys for a little bit longer. Prophecy is sort of this up-and-comer guy. Drip was very confident that he's a gunner and he was going to do well. Yet to be seen in my minds. He hasn't really competed in anything serious. Power Rangers have done like one USN qual, I think, and they did fine. They lost to some meh team, I think. I don't remember. I didn't write it down. So that's like the only time maybe anybody's even seen Prophecy, and I didn't watch that game. So I don't know how good this guy is, but apparently he's an up-and-comer and he's a huge fragger, so that's good to hear. And then Carlito was on Taichu last season, which is a squad that we'll talk about soon. And that was a roster, that's like Benji's roster, the roster turned into Hat, and now it is known as Attempt Number. And they were like one of the favorites to make it a CL. I definitely had them on my list getting in after watching the open qualifiers. They did lose in the bracket, but I thought Carlito was a really good player on that squad, so I like to see him on this roster. I think he's a good pickup after you lose Drip. You'd rather have Drip, but I think Carlito's a good pickup as well. This roster should do well. Next up on my list is zqwe, or zqwe, as I like to call them. This roster is Anthony MGS, Flock, Fiok, I believe that, or Fiok, I believe that's pronounced, Jay, and Wimpy Kid. They don't have a fifth, as far as I know. They might have found one since I did my research, or maybe they found one recently and I just didn't see it. But one way or another, Subarctic was on this team. He is no longer on this team. I'm not sure why he's not on the team. I heard that he tweeted that he wasn't going to be able to play until like the 28th or something, so that might have something to do with it. Really tough to say. Can't say one way or another. But I think that this roster have done some surprising stuff. The core was known as a little while ago. They didn't really do anything super notable. In the major quals, they took an L to Sonics, then they beat Attempt Number, which is a big win, and then they lost to Space Station Gaming. So they only ever lost to PL teams when they were playing inside of the Raleigh qualifiers, which is good. You know, they're not losing to the lower tier teams, although they didn't play much of them. And they're consistently really decent in U.S. Nationals. They are playing a lot of those qualifiers, and they're playing quite a bit. Normally, I don't think this team would make it in, but since there are so many open spots, 6 spots up for grab, I think these guys are a very realistic chance to grab one of those. Next up are probably one of my favorites to make it to CL, the Pittsburgh Embers. This roster of Callout, Grixer, Kilo, Fozo, and Forrest is a pretty deadly looking roster, to be honest. They all have previous CL qual experience. They were all, if you're watching the CL open quals and closed quals last season, not even the open quals, just the closed qualifiers, you'll definitely know all these guys. Water and Brew, Callout and Forrest from Water and Brew, Grixer from Boosted Monkeys, Kilo from Spaghetti Monsters, and Fozo from Chipsy Guac. So a lot of names there you might recognize. This core was formerly known as Stay Stacking, and before that even they were known as Proximity. That was all sort of during the offseason, but they found themselves an org now, and I think the org has chosen a very good squad. Because right off the bat, as soon as they got sponsored, they played in the Siege Rivals 2 tournament, which is a big Tier 3 tournament that I'm involved with, that usually has like all of the best Tier 3 teams and some of the Tier 2 teams. They beat TSM in the very first round. That was before TSM got sponsored. That was sort of right after they had formed their roster. I think they had faults on their lineup still at that time, although I'm not super sure. But beat them in the very first round pretty dominantly, 7-2. Did well in that tournament. That was sort of their breakout success story. They got some popularity on Reddit there. In the major qualifiers, they beat teams like Rise Nation. They beat Elevates, which are good blips on their resume. In U.S. Nationals, they beat teams like Disrupt Gaming and Arbad. So they're not like out here slapping Pro League teams or anything like that, at least in official competitions. But they are doing very well against some of the best Tier 2 and Tier 3 teams out there. So Pittsburgh Embers are probably going to be one of my favorites to make it CL. I'll be very surprised if these guys don't make it. Next roster is on here mostly for name recognition. They are known as Elevate. And this roster, man, okay, so going back to CL Season 9, the core of this roster was known as Sinister in Season 8. Came back for Season 9. They made top 4, didn't make top 2, so they qualified for Season 9. They got sponsored by Elevates. This is sort of Nog's team, if you don't know. They got sponsored by Elevates, and they did pretty poor. I think they underperformed to where a lot of people were expecting them to be. A lot of people were expecting to make top 4. They were expecting to make playoffs and have a run at PL, but it really didn't come close, especially with such a big org behind them. There's a lot of expectations. In the season, and also during the offseason, they have made a ton of roster moves. Every single week, it seems like somebody gets added, somebody gets cut. It has been a carousel of lineups. They disbanded like a week ago. They reformed, I think, a few days ago. I don't know if this roster's alive. They definitely don't have 5 right now. Nog and Spartan are together for sure. Nog being from Elevate. I think Rich is playing with them as well, and they're trying to get 2 more to reform Elevate and play under the Elevate name. They had Yellow, they had Tranks. I believe both those players are retiring, or at least they're not playing with Elevate anymore. So this team, I don't know, man. They got some name recognition. Spartan played on Spaghetti Monsters last season, and then Minigunners in the off season. But yeah, this roster has seemed like they don't know what they're doing, and they cannot keep a core together, and that really, really worries me. Putting them on the list, definitely a roster you want to look at, you want to watch for in these quals, but I would be surprised if they made it. Not that I don't love those guys, because they're a very fun team, they're a very well-loved team. It's just looking bad for Elevate, if we're being honest with ourselves here. A team from last season that's not looking bad, Arbad, finished in 7th in CL Season 9, but I think their placement and their stat line from last season doesn't really do them justice. I thought, especially towards the end of the season, they were really on the upswing. And I think that a lot of the games in the mid of the season, they just were like 1 round away. They had a ton of ties. They had a ton of 5-7 losses against some of the best teams in CL last season. And it took them a long time to find them a win. They really struggled to actually get points on the CL scoreboard. So in that sense, that's why they're down in 7th, and there's just definitely something to say about that. But they were able to qualify once, and they've only made 1 roster move recently. They picked up Glitch. The 4 of Cali, Carnage, Tuffy, and Beastly are all sticking together, which is great. I have a lot of faith in this core. I think that they have a lot of old potential. I think they have a great chance to do well. They made USN Stage 1 finals, where they beat Rogue to get there. They did lose in the finals, but they made it. In the Raleigh qualifiers, they lost to Space Station, they beat Shrug, and then they lost to Sonics. So again, only losing to Pro League teams, beating some more of the top CL contenders for this season. So Arbad, I think, are a squad that should make it again, but it's not a lock for them. They're going to have to struggle, and they could get upset for it. They also didn't do great in like the Vegas quals. They lost to Elusive, which is a decent team. I'm gonna mention them a little later on, but they're definitely not one of the favorites to make CL. So Arbad, a little bit worrying in recent results, but I think that they still can pull it out when it matters. Just mentioned this group, Shrug. This is another roster that I think has a great chance at making it to CL. Cloudstruck, Flynn, Not Loading, Rainbow, and Talon. Rainbow and Talon coming back from Toon Squad. This is, I guess, the closest thing to a continuation of that roster. Toon Squad got 5th last season of Challenger League, just missed out on playoffs. Not Loading was probably the star player on the 8th team in CL last season, so it's Gorillas. Cloudstruck was on a qualifier team named Aura last season. They did okay. I think they lost to Sills Gorillas in the lower bracket, if my memory serves me right. And Flynn is total trash. So Shrug, all things considered, are a pretty good roster. They've got a lot of that CL experience on them. They blasted through the Raleigh Open qualifiers. I think they got first. I know in the first qualifier they went undefeated, 8-0. Got a lot of popularity there. Some people were definitely talking about them. But then in terms of the closed qualifiers, they did lose both of their first 2 matches to Luminosity and then Arbad. So again, not bad teams to lose to by any stretch of the imagination. And against Arbad, it was a very close match. But you maybe wonder if that pressure can get to them if they don't quite perform. That'll hurt them in the CL quals as well. But it's tough to say, right? Shrug have a lot of talent on that roster. I think they can do well. And it's a team I'm personally really excited to watch out for. So next up, I talked about this squad a little while ago too. Attempt Number, formerly known as Hat, formerly known as Tai Chu. This is a very good roster that I thought I was pretty confident after watching the open quals of Season 9. They were going to make it to CL Season 9. They didn't. They fell in the closed qualifier. They've made a few roster changes recently. Their core of Flack, Prompted, and Benji all played together last season, are still playing together now on this iteration of the roster. Benji, of course, the star player, has always been for this lineup, but recently I think some of the other players have been stepping up a little bit more. But Benji, of course, played for Obey Alliance in season, I want to say, it was season 8, right? Season 8 of Pro League, I do believe. Aubenai and Cookies are the 2 players rounding out this roster, and of course they came from Stranger team, which was a roster for about a week, I think. And they've jumped ship. They now have gone over to attempt number. Alban I played for Sills Gorillas last season. He was a very good, but I would say inconsistent player. He had some really crazy matches, and then some matches he just sort of was playing third fiddle to mechs and not loading. But he's still, I think, a talented player, especially for this level of competition. And Cookies is sort of an old school player. He recently was on Dream Chasers, if you know that roster, and he played for Ronin back in Pro League Season 7. That was back when you could lose 2 games and be eliminated from Pro League, and his team did. They lost all of their matches in Pro League, all 2 of their best of 3 games. So he didn't do great there, but still a former pro nonetheless. This roster been together again for a long time, since at least last season qualifiers. They've had members like Vaughn, Billboard, Carlito, and Lemon recently been on the roster over the past offseason. So that's 4 players, a fair amount of roster moves, but it's not crazy. It's not like Elevate level, not an insane amount of roster moves in my opinion. They've got some good success in USN, where they beat Dark Zero 2 times, which is consistently impressive. They've beaten teams like TSM and zqwe in the major qualifiers. They lost to those 2 teams in the major qualifiers. They lost in the first 2 rounds to TSM and then zqwe. TSM, an expected loss, they ended up winning the whole thing, and zqwe, maybe a bit of a blip on their radar, because I think that's a team they're probably favored to beat. But it's only 1 game, right? 1 loss, and it ended up being the game that kicked them out of the tournament. Unfortunate. In Vegas qualifiers, they did very well. They were on the stream. They reached the semifinals. You watched Sternab and the boys, the British casters, cast them on the official stream, and they lost the space station, but it was kind of close. I mean, the second map went to overtime. The first map was kind of a slap. So they were fine. Attempt number, I think, probably will make it to CL. If I had to make my list of 6, which I'm not doing right now, but if I had to, they'd probably make the list. This team would make number 1, though. Leftovers. Yeah, everybody knew this team was coming. Leftovers are, I think, undeniably the favored team to make it to CL next season. Jarvis, Brian, Adam, Crazy, and Trippin, all former Pro League players, a combined total of 24 seasons of Pro League experience, and I didn't even bother counting how many seasons of CL experience. This roster is just so experienced. There are some teams that have some pros on their lineup, or some former pros, or some former CL players, but like that experience doesn't even come close to what Leftovers have. If you don't remember these players, Jarvis was on Dark Zero last season, one of the best teams in all of North America. Brian was on Space Station Gaming last season, a very good North American team. Adam was on Obey Alliance 2 seasons ago, who had their runs. Again, a talented squad, a talented player. Crazy played for Rise Nation for the latter half, I think for most of Pro League season number 9, so he's been one of their better players as well. And Trippin, maybe you don't know him if you're a little bit newer to the scene. He played on Elephant Gang back when they were in CL for season 8. Yeah, season 8, I believe he was on Elephant Gang. So a little bit farther back for him, but I mean, still, yeah, tons of experience for these guys, and they've all played Pro League before, right? Even Trippin, and Adam. Well, Adam, I said he was in Pro League. Yeah, so every player has been in Pro League for a bit, at the very least. And so this is a nut squad. They'll make it, 100%. ClaimCharm is the next roster that I wanted to bring up. Their lineup is sort of like a discount Leftovers in some sense. Breezy, Schlongy, Nix, Suzaku, and Austin. Again, a fair bit of experience there, but I think these are players that people have pointed to be less than ideal Pro League players. And people probably are questioning this roster if they could make it again. They could. This is sort of their opportunity to reprove themselves, right? Saying, nah, we do belong in CL, we do belong in PL. Definitely one of the most interesting rosters in my mind. That doesn't mean one of the best, but that means one of the most interesting rosters to look out for the next season of Challenger League. Breezy was on Noble way back in the day when that team existed. And then more recently, he played for the Minigunners, which was a pretty good team in the Tier 3 scene. Schlongy was on Accelerate last season. Nix was on Accelerate when they were in Challenger League back in season number 8. Suzaku was on Sinister for a bit there. And Austin is a YouTuber for Disrupt Gaming, so it's a bit of a Bolo situation where he's maybe more known for his content creation than for his play. He has yet to really play on any teams from what I've researched, so hopefully the pressure doesn't get to him like it's kind of gotten to Bolo. I think Bolo's been playing fine by the way, but that's not really where we're at here. Austin excited to see what he can do. I'm excited to see what all these guys can do, because if they finally found like a roster that can work together, if they finally stop dropping the ball, yeah, this is a lineup that on paper should make CL. But if they don't, it might be career over for a lot of these players. Last but not least, on the first sort of half of this list is Parallax. I include them because they did very well, surprisingly well, in USN. They beat Dark Zero to qualify for the Stage 2 finals, where I do believe they lost. Trying to remember who they lost to. I think TSM? I don't know. They lost to a Pro League team, ultimately. And again, this is a squad that I think on paper isn't very good, very young. They like just missed out on top 16 at the major qualifiers, and for the Vegas qualifiers they didn't do great. But they've pulled off surprising things before, so why not? I'm gonna throw them on this list. I'm gonna see how they do. Their lineup: Cry Magic, Blarn, Bravo Dog, Fahud, and Malfino. Cry Magic and Bravo Dog both played on a team called Perplexed for a while. Blarn was on Over the Wall, which is a tier 3 team from sort of the off season, past 6 months. And then Fahud and Malfino both played for Souls Gorillas during the qualifiers, Challenger League season number 9. So okay, some experience there. Not totally brand new players by any stretch of the imagination. They've achieved pretty decent results recently in some of the tournaments they played in. So yeah, another squad that I think is going to be interesting to watch. Now we move on to part 2 of this list, and these teams are going to go over pretty quickly. Basically teams that I don't think are as favored as the other guys. They maybe haven't achieved as much, but I think just based on even the CL format this season for how qualifiers are going to work, they could make a miracle run. They could pull it off and slip in a Challenger League, and it wouldn't be the biggest surprise. Some dark horses perhaps to watch out for. First one, Team Boosted. They've been doing decent in USN. They are a real org, which I didn't even realize, but they are Team Boosted. A fair amount of followers too. They've been doing okay in USN. Could make it. We'll see. Seven Spades, been a team for a long time in tier 3 scene. I've been watching them since they were playing Go4s. They made a fair amount of roster moves recently, I do believe. But all things considered, they're still scrimming. They're still doing well. I could see them making a run. Psykopaths, this is a Canada Nationals team. So I know them very, very well. A French Quebec squad. They had a pretty good showing at CN. They beat Team 6, which if you know, Canada Nationals had some pretty good teams, including former Pro League players. Kush, if you know him, back in Year 1, Season 1, beat his team with Jidus and everybody. So they're looking pretty complete. And I think in that match in particular, they showed a lot of resilience in a tough game, and when we're able to win that one out. Next up, another Canada Nationals team, Supernova. I think those are sort of the 2 Canada National teams I feel confident put on this list. Another French team. They look pretty complete. They almost beat Team Canada in the Stage 1 semifinals, which was quite impressive. They lost it, so they're out of the Stage 1 Canada Nationals. They can come back for Stage 2. I think they'll qualify for Stage 2 LAN. In my mind, this team is very good looking. The way they've been playing has been impressive to me, so I'm excited. I'm really excited to see how they perform. They're definitely the team I'm rooting for, as long as I'm not casting them in the CL Quals. Riot Squad, this team's done okay in USN. Just wanted to throw their name out there. Don't really know anything about them, but I don't want them to make CL and not have made my list, so I'm putting them on here just as security. Probably not going to make it, though. Gypsy Guac, it's the team you'll recognize from last season's qualifiers. They did pretty well in the open and closed quals. They didn't quite make it to CL. I don't know where they placed. They've made quite a few roster moves since then. I think 2 players remain from last roster to this roster. And they've been doing decent in USN as well. So a team to look out for sure. And last but not least on the entire list is Elusive. Again, this is a lineup who have done decent in USN. They've been around for a while now. And I think they can make a run at, just like all these teams in the part 2 of the list. And that's it. That's my list. Hope you've enjoyed. I will hopefully be able to put out more videos soon. Hopefully, probably when I'm back in Edmonton, I want to make a Raleigh video before that starts, doing some rankings and then maybe some other stuff. Do let me know what you're interested in seeing. I hope this was helpful to know the Tier 3 scene. Again, if I missed your team, maybe you just suck. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.